Hola, ship familia. Hope everyone is doing well tonight. Welcome back to the latinXfactor Sharpen Your Professional Edge program. I'm Dr. Dora Renault here at Ship National. So this month, our focus is on the essential skills that are needed in an age of disruption. Tonight, we'll explore topics on how to be nimble and pivot with new changes to keep you up to date with current workforce demand and stay on the cutting edge. So our special guests are Carlos Jiménez, CEO of the Youth Entrepreneurship Education System, and Nigel Thurlow, creator of Scrum, the Toyota Way. Carlos was actually one of our presenters at the 2019 convention. His workshop was extremely popular in the entrepreneurship track, so we had to invite him back. Our second panelist is Nigel Thurlow, an author, international keynote speaker, creator of Scrum, the Toyota Way, and co-creator of the Flow system, and the CEO of the Flow Consortium. So Nigel is the first ever to hold the role of Chief of Agile in Toyota globally. He was recently featured by Forbes and is the co-author of the upcoming book on the Flow system. So Nigel and William and Carlos, how are you? Welcome to the show.
I am great here from the island of Puerto Rico. How are you? Hola to everybody.
Yeah, hello to everybody. I'm calling in from Texas in the USA this evening, so I'm really excited to be here and share this presentation with Carlos.
Okay, well, let's get the show started.
Yes, and Nigel, you're on.
Okay, next slide, Carlos, and then I can introduce.
Yes, I am. There you go.
Oh yeah, there we are. I've appeared as if by magic. So hello everybody. My name is Nigel Thurlow, and Dora gave me a wonderful introduction. I was at Toyota till the end of last year. I probably spent about 15 or 20 years on and off with Toyota, and I was the first ever person to be made Chief of Agile, which enabled me to bring the worlds of Scrum and the Agile sort of thinking together with the Toyota Way and the Toyota Production System together to create Scrum, the Toyota Way. I've now gone on to co-create something called the Flow system. We'll look at some of those small aspects in this presentation this evening. And for those that care, the photograph on the screen is of a British TV show called Doctor Who. That's one of the actors from the show. And the Dalek is the gold-looking robot, and that stands in my house in Texas. Carlos.
Well, hola a todos. I started at the university level where I did my business plan, and I'm going to talk to you in a second about that. I had a master's degree and I did study at PhD level, but my major it was in University of McDonald's, which I learned a little bit about developing businesses. And for that, I'm very grateful because McDonald's shows me how to buy a property. And I'm going to tell you just very quick how to do it, just so you can grasp this. You have to buy a property which is after the light, through the right, going home. That's it. And doing that, you can be a millionaire. That's what I did when I was before 30. Purchased a property right across the McDonald's and sold it for $3.8 million. And after that, I built my own company, which was Fastlane. I sold it in around 2013. I started to sell to AutoZone, and we end up that discussion in about 2017. And since then, since 2000, I have been working with my co-founder of YES, which is Young Entrepreneurship Education System, and we have been teaching people how to become entrepreneurs. That's my family in the middle. I was a radio speaker here for a couple of years in the biggest station in Puerto Rico, WKQ. And to the right, you can see Mr. Ritsu Shingo and myself. Ritsu Shingo was the ex-president of Toyota China. He used to build some other of their corporations around the world, including Kentucky and some of others. And in the right side, you can see Nigel Thurlow. It's small, but he's a very good friend and great companion here. So it's to you, Dora.
Okay, well, let's see who's in the audience today. I'm going to launch the poll. So I'd love for our audience to go ahead and take the poll. We've got 20% that have voted, participated. We've got 50%, got 65%, 75%, and we're slowing down a little bit at 80%. So we will go ahead and close the polls, and it looks like, and I'll share the results. So we have 47% of our attendees today are university students, and 38% are 5 years or more in their career.
Great. That gives us about half and half, right?
It looks that way to me.
Yep. So let's start this skills that you need to develop if you don't have them yet. So as you can see, because of the coronavirus, we have the world upside down. Things have changed so quickly, and so much things have disrupted that it's going to be, or it's the ride that we're going, we are having, it's very difficult. So I'm going to talk a little bit about what the nudo gordiano is. I don't know if you have heard of it. The nudo gordiano is a knot that long time ago, by the time of Alejandro Magno, Alejandro el Grande, there was this knot that was made, and whoever comes in and fix it, and unknot it, will be the king, and will be the emperor. So Alejandro Magno just cut it in half. And the thing about that knot is that when you try to unknot it, you have to, if you unknot it one side, it will tight from the other one. So right now, it's not that we can go and cut everything in half and fix things. So you have to get the skills to do this. And talking about the coronavirus, it has changed everything. It has impacted everywhere in the world. Supply chain has changed. Traveling has been impacted. The confidence of the consumers, it's really down, and we don't know yet when it's going to be up. So spending is going down, and we are heading, and we are moving very fast to a depression in economics. And this is when we get punched in the face, and Tyson said it really good. Everybody has a plan until you get punched on the mouth. So plans are, they will change. So you need to learn to planning. Okay, and this is where VUCA comes in. I don't know if you have heard of VUCA and been this disruptive, this coronavirus to everybody. So you have a lot of volatility that brings uncertainty and ambiguity. So a lot of complex it's going on. And VUCA comes from the Army, which they use it to train their pilots and have them, get all these skills so they can go and understand the setting that they were working with. And to get your tools, I'm going to try to talk a little bit about how we got world-class tools, who has them and who hasn't. And this is really cool because it started all in the United States after World War II. Actually, before World War II. In 1940, the United States went and they were having troubles with their manufacturing, who were giving all these tools and all these equipment to the military in bad situations. So they went to the manufacturers and told them that they have to get what it's TWI, training within industries. So they fix the problems in the manufacturing, so they get better equipment. They won the war, US won the war. And what happened was, in the Plan Marshall, they took all these tools that they learned in the TWI trainings and put them in Europe. Okay, so after that, they went in 1947, they went to Japan and put in all these tools also with Deming and Duran and Crosby and all others. And Japan got them to, they learned all these tools really fast. So now it's spreading all over the world. Singapore got them in 1980s. Then in the 2000s and 1990s, Africa started getting them these world-class tools. But what happens that America Latina, Latin America, the Hispanics, we haven't have these tools. We didn't have any Marshall Plan. We didn't have any help. So these tools, we still have to get them, but there is no organization, there is no military that it's making us get them. So for us, it's going to be a little bit difficult, even though if you're in the United States, if you're not in a company that does those world-class tools like Lean and Agile and Scrum, it's very difficult for you to get them. So we need to fix that for us, the Hispanics. And I don't know if the guys who are hearing this do know what Lean means. I'm going to cover a little bit about that and what Agile is. But the thing is that those are not enough, okay? Even though you have to have them, you have to know them and do them. Doing the wrong thing, having efficiency will not be enough, okay? So you have to focus on creating value. And this professor, this dean of the University of Harvard said that to be in a position to capture and sustain value, you must first create it. So we have to focus on that, okay? And talking about lean is all about reducing waste, eliminating muda. So you can do all this, like eliminating defects or overproduction or waiting or motions or over processing, and that's cool. That's going to get you so far, but it's not enough. So like Peter Drucker, which is he's the father of management, he says that there's nothing so useless as doing efficiency that should never be done. So if you're doing something that you are not supposed to be doing and you're doing efficiently, you're losing time, losing money. And this is very interesting. You have to have world-class tools. Also, you have to have individual skills and attitudes. Like if you have the habit of savings, you will get longer in this period, or you will get better, or you will have a chance better than somebody who hasn't have the savings. You have to have confidence in yourself. You have to have a definite purpose in mind. You have to have tolerance, self-control, persistence, imagination, critical thinking. You have to have all that. Let's say you don't have them, you have to develop them. And by the end of the day, you at least you have to have these 5. You have to build your character. You need to be focused on what needs to be done. You have to learn from all your mistakes and from others, so you learn fast and be better. You have to be a team player, and I know Nigel is going to speak about that. So whatever you do, you have to be very respectful, okay? And let's say you can have all those 5 that I just talked before. You really have to have and I will I know I don't know if you're going to approve, but you have to have cojones. You have to have passion, perseverance, purpose in life, and this purpose has to be in the long run, okay? So, and this is very important, because everybody or most everybody will say that we're in a crisis, that there are no opportunities, and you have to think otherwise. You have to change, like a switch light. You have to turn it on. You know, you have to do it. You have to change that perception, because in every crisis there are opportunities. And let me tell you about what opportunities means. It means that all models, business models, are broken, or most of them. Even the mail, they cannot handle the packages. So if you look at that, it says that there are opportunities everywhere. So you can do, if you create value, if you do the service that it needs to be done, then you have a very good opportunity. So please don't waste a crisis, okay? So Dora, this is my part. Later on, I can ask questions. So Nigel, this is it.
Dora's going to hand over control to me, and then I can okay, do this and do a little bit of magic on this end, and then hopefully we're off and going. I assume everybody can see this slide. So Carlos has given us a good introduction and explained some of the challenges we're facing with the not only with the outcome of the COVID-19 pandemic, but also some of the financial challenges that have been around the world. And I can tell you just briefly before I describe this image you're looking at, I spent quite a bit of time in Latin America last year. I spent a lot of time in Puerto Rico with Carlos, but I also went down into Brazil and spent some time in Brazil. And I've seen some incredibly skilled and talented people, some incredible thirst for learning, some people who just wanted to soak up all the possible knowledge that we were offering and start to use that. They have a huge passion. So maybe Lean and Agile and Scrum and some of these other techniques I'm going to talk about haven't yet made it into Latin America, but I'm seeing huge opportunity, and I'm seeing a lot of education, a lot of training, and a lot of incredible people in Latin America. So I'm incredibly excited by that, and extremely excited to help as much as I can in Latin America. So Carlos says, don't waste the crisis. Everything is an opportunity. And what I'm worried about in business is that we're going to get back to the old habits. This is an opportunity to change. And what we're seeing is, this is a news article from the other day saying that the USA and the UK the same are going to be wanting to push everything from China to Vietnam. But we've tried all this offshoring thing, and when the pandemic came, the supply chains broke down, and we started finding we were having the same challenges. And so I call this shuffling the chairs on the Titanic. We all know how the movie ends. Change means doing something differently, and if we continue doing the same thing, we just change the players in the game, nothing will change. So this word resilience, you're going to start hearing this word all the time now. There's even the rumors that they're creating chief resilience officers in organizations. So the new word is resilience. How do we ensure we maintain adequate levels of inventory, whether it's medications, personal protective equipment, food supplies, fresh produce, water, and how do we retain sufficient capabilities? What we found, what we were exposed to when that when this pandemic hit in both Europe and the US, is that vital supplies were not in sufficient supply. We couldn't get them. And also we didn't have the skills or the capabilities to manufacture them. This is why you found car factories like GM and Ford making ventilators. So this is what they're talking about now. Resilience is this word you're going to hear a lot of. But here's the balance dilemma. This picture really just shows that if we move everything back to the US, or if in Europe's case back to European countries or the UK, then the costs will increase, because the cost of making things and producing things in the USA is higher than producing them in China. That's why they call China the world's factory. So if we move things back, if we say we don't want to deal with China anymore, and we rush to bring everything back home, the costs of manufacturing and the costs of producing things will go up, because labor costs are higher and everything else, electricity, gas, materials, the costs of these are all much higher. So we have to find a balance. This is where the earlier slide Carlos presented, saying, are we too lean? Did we reduce our supply chain too much to save cost? And we now need to find a balance. And one of the challenges with this, and this is what we call a complex problem where there's no simple answer to this, is if we bring things onshore, manufacturing costs will increase, then things we want to buy will cost more, and therefore there'll be a circular demand for salaries to increase. Now, I'm not a macroeconomic expert, but there is a risk that if we try to move everything back from where we've had them made in our global supply chain, we are going to increase manufacturing costs and create a causal loop, a vicious circle. So we need to teach our leaders and our executives, and I'm happy to see that half the audience are people learning to teach executives, and the other side of the audience are people who are probably in some managerial role if they've got 5+ years in their career. And you need to start unlearning some of the things you've learned in the last few decades, because that information is wrong. And actually, some of the things we're teaching you in university isn't actually the latest thinking. We need to start teaching you some of these new tools. And I'm going to go through one or two of these new tools in these few short minutes we have. Peter Drucker, Carlos mentioned him once. He's a very famous guy. He left us earlier in the 2000s, but he was considered the top management expert in the world. And he says that when you introduce change, any innovation in a corporation will stimulate the corporate immune system to create antibodies that destroy it. So you've seen that story. Every time you come up with a bright new idea, management push it down or resist the temptation for you to have that opportunity to deploy it. Or you may come up with a new way of doing things, and the people who run the organization push back because it means they have to do something differently. So when the bosses say, yeah, we're all for change, let's go agile or be lean or do some new design thinking or some new approach, then as soon as it starts to happen and they realize that they have to change, then this is where this statement applies. So one of the key takeaways that Dora will cover a little later on from this is there is no prescription. There is no one-size-fits-all method or framework. Consulting houses are quite happy to sell you the next big thing, and you pay a lot of money for the next 3 to 5 years. And indeed, some of the people at university may be learning some of these frameworks or approaches and systems. The challenge is that you have to create your own way. There is no one-size-fits-all, no automatic prescription. And the reason for that is context. There are many tools, many techniques. A lot of you are learning those. There's lots of methods and many approaches. But context determines the right approaches and tools to use. If you're drilling for oil, trust me, that's very different than if you're building cars. And that's different again if you're running an emergency department in a hospital. Please don't try and use Scrum in an operating room. Patients won't survive. It's not the right tool, but use Scrum when you're doing software development. So it's a matter of understanding your context and then picking the correct and appropriate tools, methods, techniques, and approaches and applying them in your context. So Dora mentioned I'm one of the co-creators of what's called the flow system. The flow system really is not a framework. This is not a prescription to come and take away and apply and use. What the flow system does is introduce 3 key scientific disciplines on top of what we call our lean sort of foundation. So what Toyota's taught us over 8 decades, the Toyota production system, which has been co-opted as lean thinking in the West, and the Toyota way, which is more about the sort of mindset and values of using the Toyota production system or lean thinking. We are now explaining to people that you also need to understand complexity thinking, new styles of leadership we call distributed leadership, and team science. And it's actually the interconnected nature of these different elements and the various tools and ideas that are contained within those helixes you see, those squiggly lines, that form a new DNA structure we call the DNA of organizations. And I'm going to talk to you about 1 or 2 of those tools. This is not all about the flow system. The 3 helixes, as I just mentioned, complexity thinking, distributed leadership, and team science. And you will get these slides to view afterwards, so you can look at some of the detail in them. One of the key tools that you need to start to learn, you need to understand that there are complex problems and there are problems that are more linear in nature. And the Cynefin framework is a strange word from the Welsh language because the creator, Professor Snowden, is a Welshman, but Cynefin just means domains. And so effectively, he broke the world up into 5 domains. And if you think about the coronavirus pandemic, in the center, you've got this word disorder, also now called confusion. So we started off in great disorder, very confused, and rapidly fell into chaos. There were no plans, there were no ideas of what to do. And some parts of the world, alas, in Latin America and Mexico, in Brazil, especially in some other countries as well, they're still in chaos. It's just a matter of trying things out and hoping for the best. Then we start to get people doing certain experiments, but we're trying to solve complex problems. So just trying different ideas out, and hopefully we can pull things across to the right-hand side of this picture, where we're able to start to apply expertise in the complicated domain and eventually have very simple solutions in the clear domain. So this is a way for you to understand where you are in your problem solving within your organization as a simplification of this framework. And to make that easier to understand, on the left, you have complicated work. This is where you have experts that are trained. This is the Toyota production system. So you've got people who are deeply trained in the Toyota production system and the skills to build a car. And that's very linear, it's very ordered, it's very predictable. And the resources, the people and machines are a fixed allocation. There's a certain number of them and they all know what to do. On the right-hand side, you've got the English game of rugby. And for people who may be familiar with Scrum, this is where it takes its name from, which is the formation used in the game of rugby. But here you have a very dynamic allocation. You have a fixed number of people, but the way those people are used is very dynamic. It's changing continuously through the game. And no project plan is going to give you the outcome of that game of rugby. So this is what we call non-linear, unordered, and unpredictable. And when you have problems like that, they are complex problems. So this is the differentiation between a complicated problem where you can use some established practices to solve the problem, and complex problem where you need some new skills. And we'll look at a couple of those in this presentation. The first one is something called weak signal detection. How do you know what you need to know before you need to know it? So how soon did organizations respond to the coronavirus outbreak? We knew about it in November last year. We definitely had much more information by December, and by January, the world knew, yet we failed to respond until about March in many countries. And actually, a lot of the Latin American countries are still late to the game in responding, but they had all the opportunity to see what was happening and to detect those weak signals. So how do we detect those signals before they become a problem? We need to act before we have the problem. And there's a technique called sense making. I won't read all these different examples out, but sense making is a technique I encourage you to research and learn. If you look up Cynefin, you look up Dave Snowden, and I'll make some links available to Dora so she can distribute them to the audience. there are many tools that help you to make sense of what is happening in your organization, in your communities, even at country level. There are tools to do sense making, which enable you to detect the patterns and the weak signals that you need to respond to. So sense making is a crucial skill. The best way to detect weak signals is using what's known as the human sensor network. In university, that's the students. In corporations and business, that's the employees. So listen, if you're in leadership in any of these different contexts, listen to your employees. They're the best weak signal detection array that you possess. There are tools which enable you to gather information from these different networks in a way that doesn't bias the responses that are being given, and that's part of sense making, and this is how you detect weak signals. Like the Boeing 737 MAX, there were many signals that had problems 2 years before the two crashes that where a lot of people unfortunately lost their lives, and Boeing didn't respond to those weak signals. These are the types of tools that students need to be learning and people in the workplace need to be acquiring and then using in their organizations. Here's a simple tool for all of you. If you do anything that uses a whiteboard to track your progress, whether you use the Kanban technique or you're using Scrum or some other agile process, or you've just got a to-do list on a board, during any period of time, whether it's every week or every 2 weeks, whatever your cycle of work is, as an event occurs, as something occurs either positively or negatively, your coach or team lead or somebody, a representative of the group that's tracking this work, should write down on a post-it note or something similar details of the event, or even take your phones and record audio or some video or take some photographs. Keep those visible on the whiteboard, or if you're using a digital tool, keep them visible in the digital tool. Then when you come to do a lessons learned meeting or a retrospective or a Hansai or a post-mortem, many names for these, instead of trying to remember what happened, you've actually got the facts immediately in front of you to debrief. And debriefing work that has been done is the most important way you can implement continuous improvement, the Japanese word kaizen, to continuously improve. So a couple of things I want to finish off with. Disruption, this concept of innovative disruption. The gentleman on the Harvard Business Review, he unfortunately left us this year as well. He passed away, but he wrote this groundbreaking work with some colleagues on innovative disruption, Clayton Christensen, and I adapted some of his work to sort of give you an idea, and I designed this simple 2x2 matrix to give you a simple understanding of how to use this. So let's talk about disruptive innovators. Disruptive innovators, and Tesla's the great example. There was supposed to be a rocket launch today. Unfortunately, the tropical storm prevented that from taking off today, maybe at the weekend. But Tesla totally disrupted the automotive space. He built a car that at the beginning wasn't great quality, but he outsold BMW, Mercedes, Lexus, all the luxury brands in the USA, month on month on month, quarter on quarter. And part of disruptive innovation is creating customers from an existing customer base where there was no opportunity to sell to them, and Tesla did that. He disrupted the established players, and he obviously was a new entrant into the space. And I put Uber up there. Most people know who Uber are, and Rivian, which is another entrant into the electric car space. But then you've got this quadrant on the top left-hand side, which is what I call the disrupted imitator. They're the people like Toyota, Ford, GM, not just automotive companies, but and many other companies that are chasing these disruptors. Those disruptors are eating their lunch. They're taking their customers away. So they're having to play catch up. They're having to buy the technology, acquire the competition. And this is a very expensive and very high risk to place to be. This is not where you want to be in business. You may have aspirations to be in that disruptive innovator space and exploiting new opportunities, but if you're in that responding and catching up place, that's an expensive place to be. Down the bottom left, we've got the likes of Walmart and Apple, and actually the competitors to Uber, and I now move Uber into that space. because what they've become are commodities. They're not really innovating. I use a lot of Apple devices, and it's really just general evolution. There's no massive innovation that's happening within Apple. We could argue that a little bit, but in general, they're a commodity company. They're competing with other people who sell phones and computers. Walmart are competing as the largest retailer, competing with other people who sell similar products. And so they're sustaining their brands and sustaining their business. But unfortunately, this is only the only way they can grow is reduce cost, have some other differentiator like shopping experience, copy the known brands, or grow by acquisition. And then finally, you've got your innovators. They're the folks that are coming up with brand new ideas, hoping to be sponsored by a venture capitalist. And this is where your entrepreneurs live, in this innovative space, as Carlos was mentioning at the beginning. And there may be some in the audience this evening that would like or aspire, or maybe even in that innovator space now. And you're hoping that those disruptive innovators are going to see you and then sponsor whatever you're working on. So the idea of this is not to say that you should be in one or other space. It's for you to decide where you are now and where you want to go and how you're going to get there. I recommend staying away from that disrupted imitator space. So there's a couple of other tools, and then we'll finish and we'll go to questions. There's a technique I'm going to introduce you to called Wardley mapping. You'll see the spelling on the next slide. This is an actual case study in a major financial services company. And this is where they'd got 15 major initiatives, projects, programs that they were working on. And they had sort of prioritized them in the way you see on the screen. And of course, I've changed all the names to protect the sensitive data. Important distinction here. People who are internal users or shareholders or regulators are not your customers. The customers are the people who pay you money. They're the people who you get revenue and income from. The others are just people who may use your tools and products that you buy or you create or produce. But what you really need to be focusing on is the customers, because they're the people who actually bring you a source of income. So if we looked at these 15 initiatives, and they were spending millions of dollars on about 1,500 people to build these initiatives. And then we applied them to a mapping technique called Wardley mapping. So this was invented by an English guy called Simon Wardley. And what this does, it allows you to visualize the projects, programs, initiatives that are closest to the customer, the ones the customer sees of the most value, and then also horizontally to determine which ones should we be working on ourselves. The Genesis area is the innovation, new ideas. Custom built is where you're building them yourselves. You're doing all the manufacturing or digital processes to create them. And then over to the right, in product rental, you've got services you like renting the cloud from Amazon or renting Salesforce as a CRM system. And farther to the right, you've got basic commodities like electricity. And what we found when we examined the data, these 15 initiatives, only 5 of them should they be working on internally. All the rest could either be rented, purchased, or outsourced to somebody who could do it better, faster, and cheaper. This is a critical tool for organizations to understand where they should be investing their money, time, and resources, and where their people should be focusing their time. So Wardley mapping is a tool you definitely should start to look at learning. Last 3 slides. I want to introduce you to this term called exaptation. If you've got any science students in the audience, they're probably familiar with this. But exaptation is basically a repurposing. And the original, the references on the slide is the people who originally coined this phrase, some professors who were studying this. So for instance, dinosaurs used to have feathers. Apparently Jurassic Park got it wrong. Dinosaurs had feathers. They were originally for warmth and for displaying how beautiful they were to catch a mate. And as my friend Professor David Snowden says, who came up with cannabis, he says enough dinosaurs fell off the cliffs that eventually the feathers exapted, repurposed for flight, and dinosaurs started to establish flight. Now, if that's a little confusing, here's an easy example. This is an American guy called Percy Spencer who worked for Raytheon. Back in the 1940s, he was working on radar. He was one of the key engineers working on radar, the device we use to detect planes, ships, etc. It was being developed originally for the military before civilian use. And the component inside a radar is called a magnetron. And it was when he was doing experiments on this, he noticed a bar of chocolate, and this is true, it's not a joke, a bar of chocolate in his pocket was melting. So he's effectively microwaving himself, unbeknownst to himself at the time. Once he realized what was happening, they applied for a patent on the magnetron. Raytheon then commercialized it, and then the microwave oven was born. This was an exaptation of using something for a purpose it was never intended for. And to bring this home to Latin America, you all know Bacardi. I've been to Puerto Rico several times. Carlos has introduced me to the many delights of Bacardi. So this is, if I pronounce this really badly, Distilleria. No, I'm not giving it a try. This is distillation exacted. So you've got the Bacardi brewers, the people creating Bacardi rum. They repurpose their capability to create Dawn hand sanitizer. This is a way to use your existing skills, tools, capabilities, knowledge, resources, and repurpose your capabilities rather than just close the doors. And this has been happening worldwide, where sanitizer is being created from the alcohol distillation process by many people like Bacardi. So with that, I'm going to say thank you. I've really enjoyed being here. I'm going to hand back to Dora, and then we're probably going to be able to go to some questions, Dora.
Okay, well, thank you, both of you. I want to start off with a question while we're waiting for our participants to send in some questions. My first one, I want to highlight that a phrase that you used, Carlos, when you said, don't waste this crisis. Everything is an opportunity. What are some opportunities during this pandemic that you would recommend that the participants should be focusing on right now?
And this is a very good question, Dora. If you're doing something right now, you should be thinking about going digital. Whatever you're doing, products, the IoT, Internet of Things, allows you to take everything that it's manufactured, okay, and put some sensors and stuff on it, and do that manufacturing product becomes an intelligent thing. So you can start grasping all that information, and instead of selling a car, maybe you're renting it, maybe you're doing acceptation for that from that product. So anything that you are doing right now, you should be using IoT to get all that information. So everything, all the opportunities or the major opportunities that we're going to start seeing, Dora, it has to be digital. Okay, you have a lot of things that a lot of products. Let's take a big crane. Okay, if you know that that crane is not going to be used because there is no work at that, okay, at construction, you can rent it. You don't have to sell it. So if you rent that or go do yourself with that equipment the service, so you have to adapt and do the things that you were not doing before this coronavirus. And probably Nigel has some ideas also.
So a good thing on the digital side, one thing people need to just keep in mind, digital is an enabler. It's not a replacement. So there are many techniques, many different types of work that we're doing where digital can certainly improve, whether it's leveraging artificial intelligence, big data, machine learning, and other automation opportunities. And Carlos is right, nearly everything now is coming with some form of digital capability. So we should be looking into the opportunities to exploit the next few years of digitization and what they call digital transformations. But remember, digital enables. The clear focus is on delivering value to a customer. Never lose sight of the customer and the flow of value to that customer. But there are opportunities, just like we gave the example of Bacardi, there are opportunities. And actually in Puerto Rico, there's a company that Carlos and I spend a little bit of time with, which they're called La Comprita, and they have started to do a grocery delivery service. And this has become very popular in Puerto Rico, especially under with a lot of the elderly population and those people who are doing a lot of work from home who can't get to the stores and who are more concerned about health. So people have seized opportunity where opportunity has presented itself. And Puerto Rico, of course, have been through a lot of different recovery opportunities with the hurricanes and the earthquakes and things. So it's a matter of looking for opportunities that open up. There's gaps in the market that open up that can be exploited. And as young entrepreneurs, that's where you need to be looking for those opportunities. Please do learn these new skills. Learn the skills of team science, how people work together and interact. Learn the new leadership models. We didn't have time to go into those in depth tonight, but you can do. All this information is free. The information behind the flow system is all free on the internet. But do look into complex problem solving. Learn some of those skills of complex problem solving, because they're the skills you are going to need. You can learn manufacturing skills and lean skills and various different agile skills, but you're going to need also the problem solving skills to solve complex problems. And we have a lot of complex problems now, so this is your opportunity, especially business leaders. It's an opportunity to start understanding those new skills and applying them in your context. And if you want to move into that innovative disruption space, you need to know what you need to know before your competitors find out. And these sense-making skills are going to give you the edge, the differentiator to be able to make that difference. Dora.
Okay, so this question kind of connects to that last statement you just made, and this is from Cristobal Galhut. Are there any courses or boot camps you gentlemen recommend to better prepare ourselves for this new digital era?
Yes, I mean, I teach some of them. I don't want to start selling courses on this. This wouldn't be appropriate, but people can reach out to myself or Carlos, and I'll give you some links. I mean, I've taught all the Toyota different disciplines, and I've taught the various different Scrum and Agile disciplines and brought those worlds together. And a lot of that stuff on the picture behind me from the slides I showed, I do offer tuition, either group tuition, private tuition, or offer opportunities to large organizations. And both Carlos and I work together as part of the Flow Consortium, which is a group of companies that I lead the sort of as a CEO. But there's a group of companies that partner together, which offer learning opportunities, coaching opportunities, both to organizations and individuals. So we'll reach out to you after this, Dora, and allow SHIP to provide some of that information that people may find valuable.
And also there is a lot of courses out there. You could get them for free on the internet that you should be looking at. And the excess of information, you should be careful with that. So choose wisely which are the tools that you should get. So Cristobal, you should look at what do you need, what are your skills that you want to develop, and look from there. And there are many courses out there.
Yeah, and we're putting out quite a lot of free material as well. So if you want some advice, reach out and we'll guide you in the right direction to be able to find the opportunities for learning that you need. And a lot of them, as Carlos says, are free and available in micro learning opportunities online.
So, gentlemen, what are some of your favorite podcasts you listen to?
Wow.
Podcast. I do have a couple, and actually, it's a great question, Dora. I have two different type of podcasts that I hear. One of them is entrepreneurship. The other one is about the flow system and everything about it. So when I go and look at them or hear them, I follow this guy. His name is Paul Ockers. You should look for him in whatever he's doing in lean. That's the guy. He's very good at that. And when I look at other podcasts, I have one in special that I like a lot. And if you're starting a business, this is the podcast that you should be listening, which is Startup. It's called like that, Startup, and it's the story of this guy who started a company, and he's recording from the beginning all the he's traveling to build that his company, and which he sold to Spotify for a lot of millions. So he knows what he's doing, and that what is called Startup. And the other one that I really hear is Remarkable People from Guy Kawasaki. And that one is brand new. It's about a month that he's been running with that one, but he has very good interviews in that one. So I have a couple. So let's hear Nigel.
I'm completely opposite, Carlos, because they're fantastic podcasts for people who are in, in both in the student world and in the corporate world. I mean, I would highly recommend everything that Carlos just said. And Paul Akers is somebody we both know. We've known him for some years. He's a bit of a lean maniac. He's a real big fan of Toyota and the Toyota sort of approaches. He's very full on, very lively, but all his material's free. And for the previous question, you can actually download his books for free, and he's actually released his own podcast application with all his work in audio format, all for free of charge. So there's some fantastic resources there. I agree. I actually go the opposite way. I try and not listen to things about what I work in when I'm listening to podcasts, and I listen to I'm an Englishman, so I listen to the BBC, of course, and I listen to one called The Infinite Monkey Cage. If you really want a fantastic podcast about science with a lot of humor and a completely different take on the scientific world, actually led by incredibly intelligent people. I'm talking physicists are on this show, but you wouldn't believe, you'd think they were comedians. They invite different guests from different walks of life, and they'll discuss the pandemic, the current crisis. They'll discuss many other things. So I definitely look out for The Infinite Monkey Cage. And if you want to listen to a crazy Australian professor, Dr. Carl is the podcast, and it's spelled K-A-R-L, Dr. Carl, K-A-R-L, and it's Science with Dr. Carl, and it's on an Australian radio station called Triple J, and it's a bit of a phone-in they do every week. There's an hourly podcast goes out every week, and it's another tongue-in-cheek sort of fun way of looking at science. And if you want to find out how he won an Ig Nobel Prize for the study of fluff in your belly button, that's the podcast you would go and listen to.
Sorry.
That's funny.
I do want to give a shout out. We have a few high school students that are listening.
Wow.
So I don't know how they found it, but good for you, George. And so thanks for jumping on. And let's see, we've got one from Alejandra. And she wants to know, for those early in their careers, how would you recommend learning the many skills and techniques mentioned throughout the presentation?
Well, and this I will start, Nigel, because we teach a lot of high school students how to do it. If you want to develop a skill, you have to acknowledge it exists. So you have to be exposed to it. And if you're exposed to it, then you can practice it. So my recommendation here is get that knowledge that you want to get, find out who has it, ask for that mentor to show it to you, and go practice it. Practice it, practice it, practice it. That's the only way to get all the skills that you need.
Yeah, I mean, I'll agree with Carlos. I especially agree on the mentor thing. A mentor is just somebody who helps you to learn and helps to guide your learning. It's not somebody who gives you all the answers necessarily, although there's a teaching element, but find somebody, whether it's a college professor, a school teacher, a parent, a relative, a friend, somebody you know in a local business, and sort of look at the things that really fascinate you, that really interest you, and start to learn those, and do the reading, do the study, do the learning, but then start to look at how you can apply them in your context. One of the first skills we ever teach people in when people are learning Toyota production system type techniques or lean is something called 4S, or sometimes called 5S. Then it's a really very simple skill. It's about keeping everything neat and tidy and everything in its place, and everything organized, so that whenever you go to do work, it's extremely rapid to find the things you need, the tools, the implements, whether it's paintbrushes or magic markers or pens or screwdrivers or hammers, whatever the context is. And these are very simple skills, and they're very easy to learn, but they're very difficult to practice and put in to become a habit. And so as you start to learn these very simple skills, but I promise you, these are skills that will suit you well. My daughter works for Disney. When she did her internship after leaving university for Walt Disney, she worked for the cruise line, and she went into an office which was chaos. And I taught her some basic steps of Kanban. She came to me and said, "Dad, I need help." And I gave her some basic steps, and she was able to learn that and then put it into practice in her small office environment as a junior intern, and actually improve significantly the way they were doing some work. So this is the advice I'd give to you, not only in high school, because you can do those things in school, but in university, and anybody in business who's listening. Carlos.
And Nigel, I will add to that, when you said internship, that's one of the best things that you should be doing, and do it for free. Don't let nobody to pay you for doing an internship. Okay, and this is how I started. This is how I started with McDonald's. I went to their offices and told them that I want to work for them for free, and they couldn't believe it. So they put me in a desk right in front of the boss, and he says, "Well, I don't believe that you're going to do it for free, so I'm going to watch you. So go there, ask the people that you want to learn for free, and go learn it by yourself." So there is no substitute about that.
Just a note on that, you're not allowed to do that in America. We used to have interns. I had interns at Toyota, and we had to pay them. So if they will pay you, take the money, but be prepared. Okay, so all right, Dora.
Okay, this one comes from Anupama Krishan, and they want to know, can the same concept of disruption apply to changing the structure of how businesses operate to focus on delivering value to people?
So I'm going to take that one straight away. So yes,
okay.
yes, and yes. We're talking about organizational design. Some of the challenges with organizations, they're designed vertically, or they're structured vertically. Everybody has these horizontal structures. So you have a big boss and other bosses and more people, and then eventually the people who do the work. But rarely does value flow vertically to a customer. Value flows across an organization through many departments, many divisions, and in very large organizations, this can be thousands of people. So value flows horizontally. And the person over here waiting for the value is called the customer. And so what we need to do is to optimize all the systems and the processes and the techniques and tooling to deliver the value to the person who's paying as fast as possible, because this is the person we want to keep happy and pleased. So now we've got this complicated or sometimes complex organization which is badly designed for flow. So these techniques are absolutely critical. And if you read online, there's the flow guides in Spanish as well as about 14 other languages. So you can find it including Portuguese for Brazil as well. So you can go and read some of these concepts. But the idea is to apply the organizational design and some of the techniques we mentioned earlier in the presentation to enable the flow of value. This isn't the flow of the thing you're making, it's the flow of the value, the delivery of the value to the customer. And then really organizations, if they want to be into this disruptive innovator space, you've got to create the environment for the young entrepreneurs in the business and for your members of teams to be able to bring those ideas forward so you see them and notice them and then can promote them. And that's where you get that sort of exaptive jump, that sort of major jump on your competitors. So you have to create the organizational environment to enable that innovation to happen, to optimize the flow of value to the customer. Carlos, do you want to add anything?
Yeah, only we haven't talked about this, but this is very important. Use the ORA loop, okay?
Yeah.
ORA loop, which comes from the military also. The first O is about orient, that you should orient yourself. Then, well, actually observe, orient, and then decide, and then action. So use that tool to find out the disruption, and from there, then you can do everything that Nigel just told.
If you just Google the flow guide, you can get the free copy in English, Spanish, Portuguese, whatever language you desire. Pull that down, and there's a whole section on what Carlos just described, the OODA loop: observe, orientate, decide, and act. And you'll see how that can be applicable to help your critical thinking and be able to help you move and pivot and change direction really quickly and make decisions very rapidly to outpace your competition. That's a really important point. Dora.
Okay, so to wrap up the show, I would like for both of you to share one important key takeaway. This was so much critical information. What is the one key takeaway that you want the participants to walk away with?
I'll say it, and now you probably will say the same. The Carlitos way. You have to build your own Carlitos way. You know, there is no other way. So there is the Toyota way. You should build your own skills and character and attitudes, and use the tools that you need to build your own. So the Carlitos way.
So I'm going to add a little extra here, because everything Carlos says 100% agree with. People copy Toyota and then they find it doesn't work because they copy the tools and techniques, but they don't copy the behaviors, the disciplines. So if you want to transform your organization, whether it's a university, a school, the education system, a country, or just a business, you have to also change your behaviors. The secret sauce to successful transformation is to truly change the way you do things and find your own way. Learn all the tools and techniques, abandon frameworks and one-size-fits-all promises and the holy grail, and do what Carlos said, find your own way. But you do have to recognize you will have to change the way you do things, because change means doing something differently, and that means you have to behave differently as well.
Okay, well, there you go, Ship Familia. Thank you again for joining us tonight, Nigel and Carlos. Bravo.
Thank you, Dora.
Yes,
thank you, Chip.
So we hope to see you at our next webinar, June 25th, which is with Mike Flores. He's a HR specialist from Experian, who will present Break into Tech. So come hear him showcase a few different items, including Career Pathways, which is a program that talks about critical positions that they have open in cybersecurity, data scientists, analytics consultant positions, as well as career development with tips on how to get promoted. So lots of good stuff. So we're continuing with that tech focus. So Ship Familia, please remember to take our survey. You will receive a thank you email with a survey link right after this webinar. We need your feedback to make sure that this program is the best it can be. So thank you again, gentlemen, and buenas noches, Ship Familia.